Right, perfect. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Melissa Jones from the Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence. And on behalf of our entire team, I wanted to extend a warm thank you to everybody for joining us today, and then a special thank you to our very first group of faculty panelists. Now, over the summer in the CTLE, we were considering all of our fall development offerings, and we knew in addition to some of our more traditional offerings, we wanted to introduce something new this year. We wanted to provide a space that welcomed and encouraged conversations amongst colleagues and about the topics and the experiences that matter most to you as faculty. So we brainstormed some ways to facilitate these new offerings and reflected on our own experiences at conferences and the value that we often find in informal conversation. And out of that, these faculty panels were born. Since then, we've been in touch with about 30 faculty who have offered to present during the fall semester, especially the months of September, October, and November. And now that everybody is back and in the swing of things for fall, we're going to be working with all of our panelists to schedule some upcoming sessions that will be on a variety of topics, including trauma-informed teaching, active learning, social justice, and St. Leo core values. So be on the lookout for more information in the upcoming weeks about this continuation of our faculty panels. But today we are kicking things off with these new events as our first week back and a way to open the dialogue and discuss some of the lessons learned over the last year and a half as we prepare for the upcoming term. So today is our inaugural faculty panel, chaired by Professor Holly Atkins, with a focus on teaching and technology, moving into the future by reflecting on the past. So with great excitement and gratitude, I turn the floor over to Dr. Atkins and the panelists so that they can introduce themselves and begin our conversation. So Holly, it's all yours.
Thanks, Melissa. Well, welcome everyone. I'm always appreciative too when faculty, staff take the time during the beginning of the academic year to engage in these types of professional development. So thank you all for being here today. As you read in the description of the event, I would say two key words inform the foundation for our 1 hour time together, sharing and conversations, focusing on our experiences with technologies this past academic year. I personally appreciated that time yesterday during faculty development, especially the time that we had to engage in conversations with one another, whether it was Padlets or the breakout rooms. It's that often elusive collaborative time, and with colleagues that we may not encounter in our daily interactions that I think can be so valuable. Those perspectives from disciplines that are often very different from our own, I think really helps nudge our thinking, hopefully in new ways. And that's our hope today. So we do have a diverse group here today, and I think that's going to support all of us in really reaching that core value of excellence, which, as diverse as we are in our backgrounds and our disciplines, that's something that definitely brings us all together. So if I could say we had a format, our format or way of work today will be, I'll present a question, panelists will share their thoughts to help serve really as a catalyst for the whole group conversation. Again, there's that word conversation. So not presentation, but conversation, right? Our objectives today are to identify some of the challenges we faced in teaching this past year, discuss how we use technology to meet those challenges, and then describe what technology learnings we will take into this next academic year and beyond. So again, I'm going to toss out a question, panelists will respond, and then we're going to have microphones off and we're talking. And the conversation can be through audio, but also through chat, right? That's an advantage of having Zoom here. So before we get started, I did want to do some brief introductions. Our first panelist is Dr. Monica Kiss. Monica is a professor of mathematics. She's been at St. Leo for 18 years, and she teaches all levels of math courses, including some online course development. Dr. Silon Ho is assistant professor of accounting at St. Leo University at the Tampa Education Center. He teaches accounting courses in both the undergraduate and graduate programs, and his current research interests include new accounting standards and accounting information technologies. I'm seeing some of the comments over in the chat. That's right. I think you were in kindergarten when you came here, weren't you, Monica? Was that it? Dr. Cynthia Self is assistant professor of music and music ministry. She's director of the St. Leo Singers, the St. Leo Chamber Singers, and Just the Facts. She teaches a variety of music courses and maintains an active applied voice studio. I am Dr. Holly Atkins. I'm an associate professor in the education department and chair of the undergraduate education program. In terms of technology, I'm the course developer for EDU 228, our technology and education course. So thank you all panelists, and let's go ahead and get started. So the first question I have to toss out to everyone is, so what have you done differently this past year to improve your teaching in terms of technology?
Who's going to take that one?
Oh, did you want us to start? Is that
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, I'll jump in. I was thinking, it seems like my online courses, I've tried to be more hands-on through Zoom sessions. In my on-class, I've tried to incorporate more technology and use the D2L shell and recording technology to a much greater extent than I ever have before. So it's almost like the reverse in each mode of teaching. In online, I want the students to see my face and be more connected through Zoom than I had previously done in online classes, whereas my on-ground used far more technology than I had previously used.
Selam, Monica?
Dr. Kiss was gonna say, so I'll let her take the mic first and then I'll follow.
Thank you. Well, I think many of you are sort of in the same boat as most of us in math. The majority of our classes have been using online resources for all of our classes from 003 all the way to calculus. We have, I know some of you in computer science, chemistry, maybe even some other programs use things like Cengage or My Math Lab. I mean, in math we use My Math Lab, but you know, some products that Pearson provides for online homework tools, you know, to assist in assessment. And so, at least for me, when I reflect on the last year and a half, the converting from being just traditionally on ground to online, it was not that much of a challenge, at least for me. So the transition after spring break last spring, 2020, wasn't that difficult because it was just trying to figure out how to do exams online. So what I was going to try to spend more time on later on is talking about assessment and how I use technology to improve assessment because of the grade inflation that took place, at least in my classes, and some of you can agree or disagree in your departments, but the grade inflation in my classes in the spring of 2020 was just astronomical. And so I knew I had to do something about, you know, addressing that. So that was primarily in my experience, that was a focus of my going hybrid and, you know, using technology. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kiss. I guess I'm the last victim in the conversation for this topic. And to answer this question, for my department, I like I said, Dr. Atkins talk about I teach online and also in person. And I use the technology to improve student learning and also help me to manage the number of students. One term I could have up to 100 students. And minimizing the email is one of the things that I like to do and I have been able to do successfully. So I use the discussion board. This is the group discussion board and very successful. I use it, I assign to every single student. So I have that one-on-one private conversation. So the conversation that I have with them would not expose any private conversation that we got. So I intend to, and I will use that as a tool to build relationship with our online students. And I do that strictly for the online students. So it has been very successful. And for the student in person or at the centers, and for the student that use, so, at the period where we use the Zoom as the connected course, let me put it that way to be correct. I also use the different technology for that. And that is for Microsoft Teams. And it's worked really successfully because the conversation that I have with each of the group, we have group projects. So as Dr. Self talked about, the online and in person, they're a little bit different. So I have to modify that to accommodate the team or individual projects. And I use that Microsoft Team as a way to communicate and have that private conversation without students send you a lot of emails. So the two purpose what I talk about that are like enhance the student learning and set as the stage for us to connect with the students and also help me to manage my loads of the students, my teaching. So we have so many projects and it's, email, as you all know, can be very challenging. You could spend all day just you email back and forth. And I set up the standard, say, listen, here are the technologies that you're going to learn and you're going to use and we're going to use in this course. And I will not reply to email unless it's an emergency. You're going to text me. So I give the student, my cell phone for them to communicate with me. Now, many of you concerned about your cell phone. I will give you hints about how to use it. I assume that everyone has Google Mail. So in Gmail, you should be able to use Google Phone and it will send it to you directly. You use that phone app to call the student. So keep that your personal privacy protected. Okay, so that is another thing that is very important. So it makes students feel like, okay, we are here to support them, which is true, but, give that accessibility to them, make a big difference, open up a bigger door for them. Yesterday, they talking about introvert, right? So student would not be able to open up, but if you open up that door, student would be able to get engaged with us and help us to do a better managing and teaching them. So those are the technology I will continue to use, and hopefully that will add more effectiveness in the future.
Thank you. I think we could have a whole session on managing email. I want to pick your brain on that one for sure.
Email me at any time.
Okay, good. I think from my perspective, it's very much what Seelam said. How can I connect further and establish those relationships, both in the connected classroom that I taught and my fully online students? So tools such as Flipgrid has become very popular I know others use it, and it's really a way of maybe cutting back on some of those traditional discussion boards. So I'll have a Flipgrid discussion, and it's basically students responding to a question in a 90-second video, and you can change it, but I don't care about them going on and on, but there's something about this kind of being able to see one another, even if you use it only for your introductions. I think you'll find that the relationships and the richness that happens in the discussion boards in those online courses is pretty clear, because again, this kind of connection establishes those relationships. So really, I think that's always being a challenge for us, right, in teaching. How do we make those connections? Because that's what helps establish student engagement, right? The whole idea that we say in teaching of students don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. And I think there's also that part of the whole community, knowing that the community with their fellow students cares and is there as well. Anyone from the group, anyone want to weigh in? I see some things being posted in the chat. Thanks, Melissa, for the resource with Google Voice.
I used Flipgrid in some of my online courses last spring, and the students were really hesitant at first and then loved it. So they gave really good review and feedback at the end of the course. And they commented that it helped make that online course feel more like a community. So that's exactly what I was going for. So I definitely think it was worth the time that it took to set up. And then once I set it up, it was very easy, just like the regular discussion board post kind of thing. So there was I didn't find any, it wasn't laborious throughout the semester or anything. So it worked really well.
The nice thing about Flipgrid is that it's free and it's a Microsoft product now. Microsoft bought it out. So no matter how much you use it, you don't have to pay anything. And it's really awesome. The students in my graduate course that I teach, we use it every semester, not only for introductions, as Holly mentioned, which I usually get them like 3/4 of the way through their program. And it's funny to listen to their responses, to each other, like, wow, this is the first time I've seen you. I feel like I know you now. And, so that's kind of nice. But I also use it for peer feedback on writing. And it's been really effective for that. So, and I think we've had so much interest in it. I think the center will probably offer a little webinar on using Flipgrid probably early this semester.
All right, well, let's move on to, and then you're going to find many of these questions are very interconnected too. So the second question I have is, looking back at what did work well for you in terms of the use of technology to support teaching and learning, what were those takeaways, right? Because whenever we're going to use technology, it's not always successful. It doesn't always fit with our goals or our ways of teaching, but what were those takeaways that did work well for you? Those things that are definitely worth keeping in your future teaching, whether it's on ground or online.
I don't know if Melissa, I'm hoping I'm not cutting my colleagues off here. Melissa, is there any way I can share my screen with everybody? A tool that I wanted to share with everyone. Is Melissa here?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yes. Let me know if you can share now. If not, I can change one more update.
Not yet. Okay, while Melissa is giving me access to sharing the screen, as a mathematician, someone who really likes to give feedback to students, one of the greatest tools that I was able to use this past year that evolved to help me in my assessment is this XP pen. And I want to say thank you to Audrey Shore, who I'm not sure if she's here. I haven't scrolled through all the, oh, I can do it now. Thank you, Melissa. So I'm going to go ahead and take you to this page. I wanted to show this to you because I'm not sure at this point, we're trying to be very cognizant of spending money. This item, can you guys see the screen? I hope you guys can see my screen. This is a tool that can help you teach if you're going to continue hybrid teaching, if you're going to be doing things via Zoom at any point. It is the coolest thing ever. I have a Microsoft Surface that I thought, oh, I'm not going to need this. I have a Surface Pen. My daughter has an iPad. I don't need this tool. But I said, well, just in case, maybe this is a good idea. Well, I think many of us in the math and science department, or formerly the math and science department, were able to obtain one of these. And this tool is phenomenal. It's just a little tablet, as you can see, with a little pen. You just, okay, I'm not trying to like make the bigger image. It simply has a cord that you can plug into any computer. It automatically downloads whatever software it needs to run, and you can engage with everything on your screen. So as I'm using the annotating tool, I have my little pen. You can't see the pen, but you can start drawing on the screen. You can start working on anything that you have open. So for instance, there's some cool features. Part of what I did as a way to improve assessment in my math classes online was students would send me their work after exams. Oh, I forgot to delete that. So that's actually not on the screen. I'll remove it. This tool is fantastic. If I have student work, I didn't want to bring up anything with a student's name, but you can, if somebody has their math work, this is for math, but of course, my biology and chemistry colleagues that may have something worked out. If you have diagrams that students want to submit, this is a great way to actually add your comments here, right? So I know it may seem, oh, that's so lazy, but when you're grading math work, it's so much easier to be able to say, well, right over here, you made an error. So instead of like writing comments on the side and be like, in line number 5, when you put a negative sign instead of a positive, it's just, I think students are more used to having feedback on their work, right? The math teacher or whoever pointing out exactly where they made a mistake. I absolutely love this tool. I think this has been a lifesaver for me. You can share a PowerPoint. I'm going to stop sharing. You can, if you use slides in your instructions, you can, I like to call my slides fill in the blank slides. It's where I have like my definitions, which I've been using forever and a day, so it's nothing new. But with this tool, I'm able to actually amend it so that my hybrid students, as well as students in class, were able to keep up with whatever lesson was going on. And so I call it fill in the blanks because I just like add, the work. So they didn't have to copy definitions. They wouldn't have to make mistakes with that, but they would have to engage with the work. So that's like my favorite thing. Somebody made a comment, but I couldn't read it. I'm sorry. So I recommend it. I think I saw it's on 15% off right now at Amazon. So, so if you, maybe your department can't afford it, it's not a big investment, but it's such a great tool. I can't read all these comments. I'm so sorry, but I am a huge fan of this tool. This is my greatest technology tool of all of last year, and I recommend it for everybody. And I'll stop talking so my colleagues can share. Thank you.
I'll jump in with, I guess my big takeaway is in my performance-based class, which at first glance may feel like, well, that's only applies to music classes, but I think it could have a broad application to other classes in which students have some kind of performance aspect. Maybe they make a speech or a presentation or, teach a class or whatever. we used extensive recording to a far greater extent than we ever have before in our performance-based classes. Every student of mine that took applied instruction or was in an ensemble was required to record their progress on an incremental basis. And I think that's the main difference. We did it incrementally. So those ensemble participants were, they had to submit recordings of their part periodically throughout the semester, so that way I knew exactly what they knew and what they did not know. And they also had a record of their improvement throughout the semester that they could go back and just access. Now, those recordings can be uploaded directly into D2L in an assignment folder. If a student has, now for music, we like to use external microphones just because the computer microphones are sometimes so awful, the result is not very credible. But if you plug a microphone into the computer, they can do an audible example directly into the assignment folder of D2L. And all of my applied students were required to do those little, and we're talking short 1-minute recordings. And then that gave me a basis for both assessing exactly where they were at, and it gave them a platform for going back and looking back and saying, oh, wow, well, look how much I've improved from week 3 to week 9 in the semester. Now, it's pretty obvious how useful that is in a music classroom, but I could see that in other applications, maybe language classes, maybe teaching classes, any class where you have students that are actually presenting something within a classroom situation, capturing it in a recording has just been really transformative to our teaching. Of course, we relied on the recording aspect of music all year long for our performances. So it was really critical for us last year. We really had to have, every student had to have their part 100%, not 75% or 80%. Everybody had to have it 100% because every student had their own separate track. So all of the recordings, if you witnessed or viewed any of those performance recordings that the students made, that was one student on an individual track, recorded separately, and then mixed together. Huge amount of work, of course, for us, but a great learning tool for the students. And I think one of the main takeaways I have is that I would want to record at least one piece every semester for that experience for the students. There's nothing like hearing yourself perform to realize, wow, I really need, I understand exactly what you're talking about now when you're talking about, this or that needs to change. I think video recording for myself, watching myself on Zoom, was a great learning tool for me as a professor, especially as a conductor, because all of a sudden you're having to watch yourself conduct your ensembles, watch yourself teaching, and going back and reviewing that is a great way to say, wow, I didn't realize I repeated myself so often, or I didn't realize that I'm doing that habitual whatever I'm doing. I need to work on that and improve that. And on my on-ground classes, those are techniques that I definitely will try to incorporate from now on. And then very briefly, in my online courses, I've been teaching online almost every semester as well, I found that more FaceTime, just like you guys have been saying with the Flipgrid, with the Zoom sessions, have drastically improved student response and engagement in those classes as well. I think I'll never go back to having an online semester where you don't really engage with the students through Zoom at all. It's all asynchronous and they do their thing and you grade it. I think having that, I went to doing the weekly sessions, which I know many of you are doing on a regular basis. the more FaceTime I had, and even though many of the students don't view those in real time, they go back and view the recorded session. But I noticed a big jump in test scores because we went through that material on the recording. And that really helped the student engagement and their success rates in those courses. And these are UE courses. So these are, students that are, not necessarily, certainly not musicians, that are just taking it for the UE credit.
Thank you.
I will follow up with all the wonderful comments about second question. And I will follow up to Dr. Kiss about using the tool. And as many of us that have the university computer, we don't have writing on the screen. So it makes it very difficult for us to do any annotation or make feedback comments. And I can relate to Dr. Kiss about giving feedback in the accounting work. So very similar to math. So I would use the pen, and I use my personal computer because like the one that Microsoft, what is that thing, Greg? I forgot already. That the battery lasts only 30 minutes, so it's very challenging to have a really successful sessions when your battery is so low, because you're moving around the room and you would not be able to use a lot of writing on it. So I use my personal computer, and it has a pen, so the screen allow you to write, annotate. But in addition to the technology that exists as we are using now, Zoom, I think that would be moving forward, because I saw all the technologies already in our classroom, so I don't see that would go away. And I definitely use the recording. So I have used the Zoom to do recording for the lecture. So we don't have a lot of time in the classroom. So, one problem could take a long time. And students figured out how to apply the equation and how to put things in the right place on Excel sheet. So recording a lecture before, so I would record the lecture and I post this online for them to use, in addition to third-party resources. And student had comments about how easily for them to relate to the concepts that they learn about contents for the week. And then during the lecture, I would utilizing, the exercise and practice, and I would write on the screen. So I would use and the pen, and I write on my computer screen, and it's so easy for students to see. And I also use that to give feedback to the homework assignment. And I write on that, say, here, you're missing the mark. This is in chapter 3, chapter 4, go back and look at page 11, 13, or whatever. And because students, when they read them, it's really difficult for them to capture. So when they see that visual feedback, it's really helped them. And I have to say that it has been a long time since I taught the first intro accounting class this term, and I used that option, and student really happy with the feedback. The other technology that I would bring forward, and I would like to apply to, I would like to apply the video recording to give feedback to the discussion board, because I think it's very efficient and effective. Instead of sitting there and writing on the keyboard, it takes so much time. So I can, it's easy for us to do 5 minutes talking compared to spend 15 minutes writing, because I think we all can relate to that. Because when we write on little screen, we have to go back and review and double check, make sure we, there's no autocorrect that we're not seeing. And that is very critical. And I think if we integrate those technology, that will enhance the student learning. For me, I'm teaching adult students, so I would not be able to relate to the traditional students. And as for those of you who have taught adult students, they learn very differently. And so I try to accommodate, and every single time you get a new set of students, you get a new set of challenge, which is very exciting because, you know, it's never the same. You know that you're going to learn something out of them within the term. And those are the technology that I would bring forward to the future of my teaching. And hopefully that will enhance and help me to manage students effectively.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen real quickly. Last summer, when I knew we were looking at a very different, can everybody see the screen now? Yeah. I follow quite a few K-12 educators and leaders in education, and they will share anything with you. So there was a lot of conversation in the K-12 world about how are we going to make these sort of connected classroom models work? How are we going to bring together our on-ground and our online students? So I shared this yesterday in my breakout group, slidesmania.com. Don't be put off, as some of these you may say, well, they look very elementary. You can change any of those images, but Slidesmania offers free PowerPoint templates, free digital interactive notebook templates, and that's my huge takeaway for me. So if any of you have your on-ground students, for example, write in any kind of journals, right? That becomes a problem if you've got people that are coming in virtually as well, right? So you have a composition notebook, student writes some kind of a reflection in it, and then they exchange with their peers. That's not going to work. But the digital interactive notebooks do. So they're all based on Google Slides, and there's a template that they provide you here. You just download the template, and then you can customize it however you want. So all of these, like these tabs, could be different weeks if you want. And the student, I posted it in D2L, the template, and then the students made copies of it. And each week they wrote a reflection on the course readings. And then they shared that, they shared that with their peers. So the collaboration became huge. And what I really liked about this, and all I did was tell the students, this is the format that we're going to use. There's some free videos in here too about how they do it, and I had instructions. But then I let them find the different tools so they can comment on one another's journal, and the comments come over in the side. What's cool is that the comments can be in a variety of forms of text. So yeah, they might write in a traditional comment. They might also put a link. Hey, that reminds me of something I read. Here's the link to the article. It could be a link to a video. The comment itself could be an image. So it really helped not only expand the collaboration, but expand the options of what students could do to be able to interact. And I do believe I had a lot more quality of interactions. They really were. I didn't even have to go out there and say, now you're required to post comments with 2 additional articles or 2 videos. They were motivated because it was very interactive and creative. So again, if you just go to the Slidesmania website, there's templates like this in a variety of form, and then you just customize it to however you want. Anyone else?
Dr. Atkins, may I ask you a question? If you could compare that with OneNote's class note, have you used it in Microsoft package?
I have. And And it might just be personal preference. I personally just found that the Google Docs and the Google tools are easier to navigate. So even when I have students working in breakout rooms, etc., I set up a Google Doc, send them the link, because I can't always monitor everything that's happening in those breakout rooms. And so each of the groups contributes to that document. And I'm sure you can use that with the Microsoft tools. I think it's just whatever feels more comfortable and intuitive for you.
Holly, I noticed in the chat there were several comments about using the recording features in D2L and some of the issues that people had, and I can certainly relate to that. We ended up having students record on their phones more than, unless they were only going to do like a 30-second little very brief clip. And I used another software which doesn't really apply to anyone else. It's specific for choral ensembles and singing. But I would like to just ask the technology team if the audio recording feature could be extended, because you can only go 1 minute if you're recording into the D2L shell. Now, what my students did was they recorded on their phone and then they just uploaded it or sent it to me. And that worked. I mean, our phones are so much, the technology is so much better than what we can access in the D2L shell, but I can see where that would be very cumbersome and not very practical for other teachers. And then sometimes the video, if you don't have a fast internet access, the video can be somewhat problematic because it will interrupt it. If your internet is cutting in and out, it will definitely interrupt your video speed. And that, the other I mean, we spent the whole semester recording off my iPhone. I have a tripod and everything in the music building that we used, which worked beautifully for us. But if those aspects could be improved in D2L, I think that tool would become much more universal to a lot of people to use that aspect a lot more easily and efficiently.
Cynthia, I might be able to provide something of an answer to that question about extending the time. Our team does all of the training and the support for D2L, but we don't own D2L for the university. Doesn't come under our wheelhouse as far as the decisions that get made about D2L. Mm-hmm. My recommendation would be to submit that request to Learning Design, because they don't know what people need and want if we don't communicate that to them. And we can certainly communicate that as well. We have a monthly meeting with them just to kind of touch base on things that, that intersect our work. And we can bring that up, but I think it'll mean more coming from individual faculty members. So if each of you who posted in the chat about needing more time, and each of you who are thinking about, gee, I would like to use more recording time or use recording if it were longer, if you would just reach out to Learning Design and let them know. And I don't know, Melissa, who would be the best person for them to contact? Would it be Christine Hewitt? Would it be Karen Hahn? Karen Looney? I don't know.
I would reach out to Karen Looney. I can link her email in the chat for everyone if you'd like.
Oh, that would be perfect. Perfect. Because sometimes D2L has options that we don't use because, there can be so many options. If you used all of them, we just, drowned in all of the minutia and the options. So they might only select to turn on some things. And honestly, I have chosen not to use the video in D2L because it has been so short and sometimes wonky, and that's one of the reasons that I use Flipgrid for interaction. But that's definitely something. And then they can also provide that feedback to D2L, because D2L is always, they're always upgrading and updating. And so I think that's really important feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's talk about, we've talked a little bit about assessment, but for everyone in all disciplines, disciplines, effectively assessing students' mastery of course objectives is always going to be a focus and concern. So what were some of those challenges you faced in this area, and how did you meet those challenges?
I don't want to always go first, so.
All right, Dr. Kiss, I will tackle it. The challenges with using the third party, and there are also benefits also, because it's allow us to auto rate. It will help tremendously, and I think, and the challenges with using the third party assessment, I found it's very difficult for the student to understand how to use them. Okay, it's a learning curve. It doesn't matter. Every single course is very different. I could go to accounting 1 and I go to accounting 2 and accounting 3, and I'm just making the numbers just easy. And we use entirely different. We're not using Pearson. So in accounting information system, I would be using something entirely different. And student do not have time to learn how to use the technology. And I think that is one of the challenges of assessing students in different courses. It's not consistent. And I wish that we have a universal way of doing assessment in that way, that it helps students to maintain the level of learning, because they don't waste the time of learning the new technology. And before they capture all the tricks and skills, and then next thing they drop, and then they move to the next one. And I found that to be a very challenging for students, also for faculty. But for me teaching with many students, and I totally overwhelmed with assessing. And I will point out, during this term, I'm teaching Master of Accounting for Government Accounting. And this will to bounce back to Dr. Kiss' observation about the inflation. So I noticed that I researched, and I found it's in whatever notes that is out there website, and then the other website, all the solution of our problem, homework, whatever, is all out there. Okay. And so I have to rewrite my homework assignment. And that really, yes, thank you, that really threw the student off, and they went banana about the homework assignment. I could literally spend an hour to write the feedback with my pen on the screen to give them feedback on the homework assignment in the last 2 weeks. I have to tell you, it took all my time away of doing research and doing teaching. So just think about the assessment and the challenge, and giving feedback, go back, bounce back to prior questions that you asked us. And I think that is the biggest challenge that I have found, using different technology to assess students. It's in every single different course is different. And I'm not the fan of Pearson whatsoever, because you get a little screen with many little screen within it. And that is the disadvantage for us to use as a faculty to do an assessment, and also for students as well. So I knew that this find a common theme or a common tool that we could use for the assessment for all courses. D2L is very limited. Your question would be multiple choice. You can't really have students to go in there, for Dr. Kiss and I, to go in there, a student going to write something that we would be able to comment and feedback. And I'm not sure, this also about back to Candace, comments about features within the D2L. And I wish that we could have direct recording in the discussion board, because you can only do externally and then attach to it. And that's some of the challenge that I found. And I when we starting out, I was using so much different third parties, and we still are in the accounting department. And unfortunately, those are the things that I don't think is going to go away. So it's mean that it's challenge, but then we have to try to figure out a different way to overcome it. And for different departments, it's very different, but I can see that Dr. Kiss and I can relating to, because we get equations and math and work. Not as much as her department, but still challenging for me to do an assessment on the student homework and give feedback accordingly or appropriately.
If I can piggyback, Cynthia, I hope you forgive me for jumping in right after Dr. Ho, but so my progression, and I don't want to take time away from you too, but in the spring of 2020, everybody was just, trying so hard to accommodate our students. I remember the grade inflation was simply a matter of fact. I expected nothing less. We're trying to give students extra time. We didn't know what they were going home to, what kind of internet access they would have, what kind of tools they had. We didn't have requirements for our students in that spring semester in terms of technology. So I know I gave way too much time for students to complete exams, once we were able to figure out, how to use, depending on the classes, Dr. Ho, we would use either Pearson or Cengage products like Mind. I think MindTap is what some of the people in computer science use, which is essentially a Cengage product. So, over the summer, talking to people, reflecting on all that we learned from that semester, going hybrid, I realized that we didn't want to be exchanging papers, right? There's just no way to do that. So I knew that we had to continue using the resources for testing. The good news in our department is that our students learn to use the products because they're homework, which we have been using for all of our, remedial to, I don't know if I'm allowed to use that word, sorry. So like our math 003 all the way to calculus, our students are using those tools for homework. So by the time they get to their first exam, they know how to enter expressions, they know how to use the tools. And, within the classroom environment, we talk about, spending time, here's what you need to know, this is how you use the tools. So by the time they get to the exams, that was not that much of a learning curve, if that makes sense. And that's, again, as you said, Dr. Ho, it's because of our department has a different strategy for conducting assessments. We love the tool because it's immediate feedback, right? It's not only, so we do appreciate the fact that not only is it multiple choice, so they provide opportunities for our students to interact with the material. It's not only multiple choice, there's, fill in the blanks and so on and so forth. What I did change though for the last year is because I knew they're cheating, it was very obvious from the grades. In the fall semester, I realized very quickly that the students were, just entering answers. Well, my philosophy in math has always been, show me your work. If you don't show me your work, I don't know where you get your answers, right? In a traditional classroom. So in the fall semester, after realizing I don't know where these students are getting lost, I don't know why their answers may be correct or incorrect. Could they have arrived at it by complete accident? Or were they like checking on the answers on, Google, right? What is the, and then you fill in the blank and you find the answers. So in the fall, I said, well, I didn't put this in my syllabus, but I'm going to give them a little candy or a carrot and say, if you send me your work, if you show me your work, then I'm going to be able to provide you even partial credit if you did not get it right. And if you just made a silly mistake, I'm going to give you full credit. And let me tell you, students started to send me their work and they were getting credit for their work. I never liked multiple choice like you, Dr. Ho. I don't see a value in, we use it for a lot of assessments, GRE, SAT, all that stuff. But so a lot of students took advantage of that. And like I was talking about with the XP pen, I was able to provide feedback. I was able to point out, here's where you made a mistake. And then hopefully they took the time to read my feedback and they fixed it by the time the final exam came. Does it take a long time? Yes, but I would be grading their exams anyway. So it was just a matter of being able to provide feedback on the different types of file formats that I was getting. The only one that I haven't been able to do a really good job with, I think, was some pictures, not JPEG, but some of the picture files that I would be getting, I couldn't write on with the XP pen. So I have to just research and figure that out. But in the spring semester, I made it a mandatory part of their exam. And they had to submit their work. You know, everybody has some kind of a phone device where they can take pictures. So I gave them 20 minutes after the exam was over. You need to send this to me. If you didn't, 10% off of your grade. Because there's an incredible amount of cheating. And the good news is, and I'm going to end here so Cynthia and Holly can add, the time they took to write work out took away from their opportunity to cheat. So the requirement of sending me the work made it harder for them to cheat. I'm not saying impossible, but it was harder for them to cheat because they actually literally had to submit work. And if they didn't, they lost points. So that's how I, progressed in my learning on how to try to, not avoid completely, but limit the amount of cheating that the students could do. And my grades were not the way they were in the spring of 2020. They're more legit to what they're capable of doing because I was able to give them. Oh, thank you, Chris Miller. I try to learn from the mistakes of my past. Not always very successful, but thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Cynthia?
I just had a phone call from one of the music adjuncts this morning about this very issue. And he was asking me, well, gosh, if you connect them to the answer key, then they don't, in D2L, then that just becomes out there, on Course Hero or whatever, and then they're just copying and pasting answers. And, he was trying to figure out, well, do I have to go in and, respond to every single question and every single essay? We have a lot of essay answers in the UE courses, a lot of writing, as I know the English professors and humanities professors can all, relate to. The one thing that we came up with, and I'm going to try it myself, is to put into the general, the feedback that goes to every student in your class, that if you have a question about your essay answers, I give partial credit to every little scrap of information they get correct in those essay answers, even if it doesn't match completely, the answer that I was hoping that would match up with the answer key. And so, to just have them connect with you through Zoom or through discussion board on that particular essay question, so that you're not, because the minute you put it, the correct answer in the feedback, then there it goes up on the internet, and we're all getting, at least in our music classes, they're very, very popular classes. There's, like 8 sections every semester online of the spirituals class and 4 to 5 sections of the making sense of the sound class. And so those answers, they're out there, and you end up reading stock answers over and over again. We're going to have to revise all those questions. And, it's a problem. It really is a problem with many adjuncts. We probably have up to maybe 12, 15 adjuncts teaching those classes every semester. And we're all facing this issue of how do you give meaningful feedback? How do you let students know, wow, you were way off on this, without just feeding, saying this is what the answer should have been. If anybody has good suggestions, by all means. I mean, I think the UE classes are the ones that are, not that everybody's class is vulnerable to that, but there's just so many students taking those classes every semester. They're particularly vulnerable to that kind of cheating.
I think, once again, I think we've probably unearthed topics, especially this one, because I'm seeing things in the chat. Probably a whole other panel focusing on this topic. I do want to be mindful of everyone's time. It's 1 o'clock. Melissa or Candace, did you have any wrap up statements that you wanted to make?
I think Melissa probably does.
I just wanted to say thank you again to everyone for joining us, and our closing comments, Karen Garcia is going to jump in with our final thoughts for the day. And again, thank you all so much, and do pay attention for the upcoming panel series sessions we're going to be offering throughout the semester. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much to the panel. In the chat, as usual, we do have a survey that we would like for you to complete. If you could just take a moment and just do that for us. There's about 7 questions, so it shouldn't take you too long. So thank you again, and have a great day. We'll see you again.